All right, so this one's about dealing with major mental health issues. I usually, I have a feeling that this won't be very long because it's a relatively straightforward idea, but I have found that I say that sometimes and then I wax poetic a bit more than I expected. So, major mental health issues. Most people, I was talking to a guy yesterday actually, and the topic came up because it's kind of true for most people. If you read like a psychology book or read just like the symptoms of a particular psychiatric disorder, you often find yourself reflected in it. You're like, oh, I see my personality in there. And so most people have, you know, nobody's perfect. So most people have mental health issues to one degree or another. Some people, like, they've got significant issues with certain portions of their personality, and some people have enough issues with enough portions of their personality that they're what we might call maladaptive. And that's basically what like a psychiatric disorder is. It's normative. And normative is a good word to understand. Normative is like how things should be, and all shoulds are constructs. I mean, we all just agree that things should be one way or another, the same way we agree that all words mean certain things. All words are made up, you know, including psychiatric disorders. They're all made up. We just agree. And so if you have a disorder or if you have a major mental health issue, fundamentally what this means is everyone else has agreed that what you're doing is maladaptive, and probably including yourself, because oftentimes if you do have a mental issue, part of it is that you have to be suffering, you know, like that it has to be causing you an issue. And so a lot of times that's just internalized, like our culture gives you certain ideas about how things should be, and if you subconsciously don't recognize that you live up to that, then you beat yourself up as a result and you suffer, and so you get some anxiety or whatever. But anyway, this one was about how to deal with those types of things. Now, if you read some of the literature, it can be pretty, well, number one, it can be daunting. It's interesting because the whole idea of putting a name on an issue is that it's supposed to reduce its impact on you. And you can trace this back, I've talked about it in other videos, but you can trace psychological disorders, the names we give them, back to, I mean, basically the oldest stories we know. There's my favorite one to talk about, which I heard from Jordan Peterson, and it's great. It's about a guy named Marduk. Marduk actually was Mesopotamian, and he faced like a dragon, and he put a net over the dragon, and then he breathed I think fire into the dragon. And metaphorically what that means is he spoke true words. That's the breathing the fire and kind of filling the dragon up, because when you speak, it's breath coming out, it's air, you're breathing air out that has power. And so the idea is, hey, if you put a true word on something, it's like putting a net over a dragon, and it makes it more palatable. And so that's the whole idea of well, one of the whole ideas of psychiatric disorders is that, hey, if we could just get a handle on what exactly is going on here, then we can reduce its impact on the person. And that works for all kinds of things in your life. Like if you find yourself like scrunching your neck or squeezing your eyes through the day, it's probably the case that there's something in your subconscious that you're kind of avoiding that is making you uncomfortable and anxious. And if you confront that, you know, confront the dragon and try to put a name on it, a gentle category as the Buddhists would put it, then you can reduce its power over you. Because what you're really doing, and these aren't my ideas, I mean, this is just, people don't talk about this very much though. What you're doing is you're taking the totality of all the things that might bother you and you're sectioning out, you're compartmentalizing just one little bit of it, and you're putting a word to it. You're saying, okay, well, there's lots of things to be worried about, but this particular thing, I ain't got to worry about. I put a little box around it and I got it. So you put a name on it. And so anyway, the way these diagnoses work is that they comprise several symptoms. So you're clinically depressed if you have, like, I don't know, it's like 6 out of 10 symptoms that are listed in this book, you know, this magic book called the DSM, whatever it is. But fundamentally, it's just a bundle of symptoms. That's what it is. So if you have a disorder, or you suspect you have a disorder, really what you have is several, you know, personality issues that when combined, when their forces are combined, become enough that we say, okay, this meets that standard, and now it's a mental health issue, now it's a mental health disorder, or whatever. But fundamentally, it's just a bunch of little symptoms. And so that's what kind of made me want to talk about that this morning. So unfortunately, some of these disorders, they basically say in the book, oh, you can't cure this, or basically this is very unlikely that you'll cure this. And that always bothered me, because it's like, well, if you believe in the notion of therapy, then how can you say something can't be fixed? You know, if all we're dealing with is a bundle of symptoms, you know, how can you say that you couldn't, over the course of your entire lifetime, untie each of those knots? You know, if it's just 6 symptoms, I mean, you could deal with one symptom for like, just do nothing else but take care of yourself and deal with one symptom for like a year or 2. I can't imagine the supercomputers inside our head couldn't figure that out. So that always kind of rankled me. And so a sort of visual, metaphoric notion popped into my head. And I don't know, I like putting words on things. Obviously, that's what we're talking about here, putting words on things. But I like the idea of coming up with strategies for things. So the Christian strategy, and I mean that specifically, there's a strategy outlaid on the Sermon on the Mount, and it's an obvious strategy once you hear it. It's in a lot of self-help books, like I believe The Secret, which was a very popular book several years ago. It talks about it, but the Christian strategy is to orient yourself towards whatever your highest goal is, and then in every day, do everything you reasonably can do to move towards that. And over time, surprisingly, you get closer to your goal. Sometimes you even, you know, successfully achieve it. That's a lot of what the Sermon on the Mount was actually about. And that's part of the reason why it was such it's stuck with us, the whole Christian Bible, you know, kind of taking over the West. That's part of the reason why that happened, because that is a very good strategy. I mean, no matter what your goal is, it's archetypal in the Sermon on the Mount, because it's like orient yourself towards God, and then do the things that you know, like point yourself towards heaven, you know, the good place that you want to go to, and then do everything you reasonably can do every day to kind of get yourself towards that. And basically, that's a good strategy. So let's say we apply that to this particular issue, which is, hey, maybe you have a mental health issue or a mental health disorder, which is like a higher level of issue. Well, you could orient yourself towards fixing it. Like, just orient your entire life towards, hey, you know, I don't get to whatever you want to find meaning in your life, you know, you don't get to do that until you take care of the thing that's stopping you, you know, that flat tire in the back that you need to handle, right? And so if you orient yourself towards it, well, the first thing you're going to do is, well, identify what the disorder is, or what bundle of symptoms. You don't even need a disorder, you just need to know what the symptoms are. So first you identify your symptoms. You can go talk to a counselor for that, or you can just be very observational, become a watcher within your mind, and meditate and watch the things that happen, and then kind of keep a log of it, figure out what's going on with you, and orient yourself towards taking care of those symptoms. And a lot of them come in bundles. It's going to be different for every person, but if you look at the individual symptoms of whatever the issue that you have are, it's almost like looking at strands rather than the rope itself. You know, like if you try and cut like let's say a Kevlar rope, oh, it's going to be very, very difficult, because Kevlar is tough, or like maybe cut through Kevlar material. Like that's armor, you know, it's not very easy to get through that stuff. But interestingly enough, if you take a small enough strand of Kevlar, or aramid, which is what it's called, it can be cut relatively easily. But you have to go strand by strand, in essence. Now, the metaphor breaks down when you start thinking about how do you defeat, you know, Kevlar body armor. That's something separate. But the idea is that Kevlar threads are quite tough, especially when woven together. This similarly to how a mental health issue is quite tough, especially when you have multiple threads, meaning symptoms, woven together. But if you start picking those symptoms apart, like take depression for instance, one of the like hallmark symptoms of depression is a relatively easy one to deal with. It's you're either sleeping too much or too little. And you could just become a tyrant to yourself and be like, you know what? I'm not sleeping in. I'm going to get up at 4:45 every day. And especially if you have a tendency towards something like depression, that's a pretty easy one to do. Because it's just you're the one. It's just like trying to quit cigarettes. Like everybody has not everybody. Some people have a hard time quitting cigarettes. But fundamentally, you're the one going to the gas station and buying it. You know, it's you. So you're the one who can not go to the gas station and buy it. But anyway, so you take depression. Well, that's one. Wake up at 4:45. Do that for a year until that's your habit. You don't care. You're going to get up at 4:45, right? Here's another one. Another thing depressed people do is they don't take care of themselves physically. Like they don't eat right, and they don't exercise well. I harp on this all the time, because obviously I've had a history of some depressive type things, just like a lot of people. I think depression has like it's either a 1 in 6 or 1 in 3. I think it's 1 in 3 incidents. So 1 in 3 people are going to have depression at some point in their life. So this is a really common issue. And anyway, you know, you could take drugs to fix it, which a lot of people do. They'll self-medicate with alcohol or cannabis or food, you know, or, you know, distraction via video games, or any number of things that you can do to get little bursts of serotonin and dopamine. People do it. But if you wake up every morning, well, there goes that one symptom. You're not having sleep issues anymore. Because I tell you what, if you wake up at 4:45 and you try to stay up late playing video games or something, but you make sure you get up at 4:45 the next day, it's only going to be a few days before you determine that it's better to just go to sleep than sit and watch TV. And you'll start to think that. You'll start thinking like, man, there's really nothing that good on between like, you know, 8:30 and, you know, when I wake up. Like, would I rather be sleeping during that period of time or watching television? But anyway, you can fix that. That's one thread you can just take care of. Another thread is, I'm going to exercise, you know? And it could be, you take one extra step each day. Carry a pedometer. One step. Let's say you're ultra depressed. You're walking 500 steps a day, just lay in bed all day. Walk 501 the next day. Well, arguably, over the course of, let's say, 10 years, you're going to get yourself up to, what's that, 3,650 steps per day? That's not that much, but that's better than 500, right? You're going to be, and the thing is, you may become irritated with your lack of movement towards your goal. I mean, once you start seeing those steps, you make it 10 steps more a day. It doesn't matter. But day by day, you can make yourself wake up. You can make yourself take a couple more steps. So there goes sleep issues and exercise issues, portions of depression. And the thing is, both of those are actually going to regulate you, and they're going to start affecting the other symptoms as well, because these things come in bundles, you know? That's why, like, a simple medication like a serotonergic, something that affects just serotonin, that's why a simple medication like that works so well for depression, is because depression is it's a constellation of symptoms, but there's really only one cause for it. And I can tell you what the cause is. You could just, you know, think about this, meditate on this for a while, and then maybe this would be helpful. I mean, you don't feel like you're worthwhile. You don't feel like you're valuable. And if you look at things from a biological perspective, what that means is, if you were in a chicken coop, you're at the bottom of the pecking order. And you can, I'm sure there are scientific like experiments on this testing serotonin levels, and I'm sure the chickens at the bottom have less serotonin, because that's how humans are, that's how lobsters are, that's how it is. And so you, due to your behavior, your subconscious and the things that have happened to you, your subconscious thinks you're low. And so if you want to make yourself feel high, well, you can take a drug and, you know, shoot your body full of serotonin, or eat some food, get some serotonin. Alcohol, get some serotonin. Cannabis, make you not give a fuck. Sorry about the curse word there. You can do these things and you can reduce your depression, or you can just recognize, oh, I'm just acting like a low person. If I was valuable, my time would be valuable, and I wouldn't spend it watching television that's like low rent. I'd make sure that if I'm going to sit in front of a TV, it's for something high quality, or for some like well-deserved rest and relaxation. And you don't deserve rest and relaxation if you haven't got after it, you know? Like, it's the same reason why drinking a beer after a bunch of yard work all day, it tastes a lot better than just like waking up and having a beer with breakfast. It's because you deserve it, and you subconsciously know it because you got after it. And so you feel good and you get more serotonin as a result. But anyway, I guess I'm digressing a bit, but yeah, so the strategy would be, first, the Christian strategy, meaning point yourself towards whatever your goal is and do everything you reasonably can do per day to do it. And if all you can do is take 10 more steps that day, good times. If all you can do is wake up 1 minute earlier, then good times. Do that until you hit 5 a.m. or 4:45, so that you admire yourself for your self-control in the morning. 1 minute a day, you'll get there. 1 minute of exercise per day. You can do 1 minute of exercise. You could do 1 minute waking up earlier. But over the course of a year, if you get your sleep in order and get your exercise in order and get your diet in order, you've knocked out probably enough of the symptoms of depression or whatever your mental health issue is to no longer be considered, what would you call it, clinical. You're subclinical at that point. And if you then point yourself towards whatever the next symptom is, like strands from a Kevlar rope, you can slowly cut them. And you can cut otherwise very, very difficult situations down to size. It just takes time. And that's the Christian strategy. Plus the, which honestly, it's not even like, I was thinking, oh, it's like a rope, it's like a rope cutting strategy. You want to cut each strand at a time. But fundamentally, that's still just that Sermon on the Mount Christian strategy that you see in a whole bunch of like self-help books. But yeah, anyway. That's how you can solve a major mental health issue. Apply the Christian strategy, I suppose. And you do it like piece by piece, little by little, as much as you can do each day, and then you can fix yourself. No matter what the symptoms are, you can slowly fix that. And who knows, maybe that's part of the reason why Christianity was so popular back in the day, is because we didn't really have medications that were very effective and useful. I mean, these guys are taking like whatever psychedelics they can come across and mixing them in various quantities to try and get some perspective. And you know, this particular strategy it works without drugs, you know? So anyway, yeah, that's how to deal with major mental health issues from a day-by-day basis, Christian strategy.